Does red light penetrate through bone? What about through a skull? Using my spectrometer and some red light devices, I'm gonna find out. Yeah, so this is quite a common question I get. It's something I've often wondered myself. Is red light and near infrared light actually penetrating the skull, getting into the brain, going through bones in our hands, for instance? What's going on here? There are a lot of red light therapy devices on the market that are designed to optimize cognitive function and brain health. We have products like the Neuroradiant 1070, the Violight device. There's also a lot of handheld devices that are often marketed as being cognitive enhancing. I mean, you've even got the hair loss products. Sure, those are designed to help regrow hair, but I've often wondered, hey, is that light going to make it through the skull into the brain as well? So today what I've got here is an Infrared Micro handheld battery powered red light therapy and near infrared light device. This thing puts out quite a lot of power given its size. We're going to use this as the light emitting device. I've also got this marrow bone from a cow. It is a tibia bone that has been cut in half to expose the marrow. I used some calipers to measure the thickness of the bone, and it comes out to be about 9 or 10 millimeters thick, which is perfect. Why is it perfect? Because the thickest part of the human adult male's brain is about 9 or 10 millimeters, similar to this. And then finally, I have this beautiful goat's head. This is a goat that I shot here in New Zealand a few years ago. I cleaned it all up and it's going to go on a wall somewhere. It's been sitting in my shed for a long time. Now, I thought, you know what? Maybe we can use this as well and see if the light is exposed to, say, top of the bridge. Is it going to make its way through to the oral cavity, for instance? So even though the skull is a lot thinner than a human skull, still, we should be able to do some neat experiments with it. Now, before I get started with my experiments, I do want to talk a little bit about this topic. Now, we know from both the scientific research and also anecdotal reports that red light therapy is very beneficial for cognitive function and even helping with brain disorders. As I mentioned, there are lots of products out there that are sold for this reason, and some of these companies are doing really, really well, lots of sales and getting lots of exposure. That wouldn't be the case if their products didn't work. Recently, I spoke to Dr. Randy Beck. He specializes in treating patients with brain disorders. He even uses photobiomodulation, red light therapy, to help stimulate certain areas of the brain. And he said if you overstimulate the entire brain and you have an underlying health issue, you could in fact actually do damage. So it is well known that yes, the light is getting into the brain, but still, I want to test it myself and I want to see how much light is needed, how much energy is needed to penetrate the skull and get into the brain. Because still, despite the research and despite the anecdotal reports and despite doctors and specialists using this technology for the brain, there are still people out there that say, no, this isn't going to work. It cannot work. I recently encountered someone who was very, very intelligent, and he pretty much laughed when I said people were using this to help stimulate certain parts of the brain. He said, no, that can't be the case. You're just seeing a systemic benefit. Maybe it's getting into the blood. So enough about that. What I'm going to do now is set up this experiment. I have all my devices here. What I'm going to do is set up the spectrometer and the light at, say, an inch distance. And we're going to get a measurement on screen to show how much irradiance the sensor is picking up, how much energy the sensor is measuring. Then we're going to drop the bone in between the two and see what happens to the radiance figure. We're going to see if the red or the near infrared light still are detected. And we're also going to see how much of that energy is picked up. Now, I should mention this is far from being a credible scientific experiment. It's just me having a bit of fun here. So don't get too caught up in these numbers, but we should still get a rough idea of what's happening. One other thing I'll mention, this marrow bone, I actually scooped out some of the marrow. So we only have the bone, and then the bottom, say 2/3, still has the marrow in place. So I may actually do some experiments with just the bone and then some other experiments with the bone and the marrow to see if the light is penetrating bone and marrow. The marrow is a good replacement for the brain. It's quite fatty, so it'll be interesting to see if that light is penetrating through the fatty tissue. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this device on now. This actually has dual chip LEDs in it, so you got red light and near infrared light. Okay, so I've got my spectrometer here and the light. Now I've turned this on. I'm gonna place the light 1 inch from the sensor, and I'm gonna have them all set up on a table so everything's nice and flat and not moving. Now, what you're going to see on screen, I'm going to take a recording here. We're going to see what shows up on screen. Okay, cool. So you can see both the red light with this peak here, peaking at 6 660 or thereabouts, 665. And then the near infrared light over here at 851. This position is actually really good because we're getting a 50-50 split in energy between the red and the near infrared, which is going to be interesting to see what happens with the light when the bone's added, to see which one penetrates. I would expect the near infrared light to penetrate better. The radiance figure for this particular position is 64. Let me take another reading. 64.5, 65.1. So it's about 64, 65 milliwatts over centimeter squared, which is a decent amount of light. This particular unit actually puts out a lot more light. At this distance, I've tested about 95 milliwatts. However, given this setup I have right now, it's only showing about 64, but that doesn't matter. What I'm gonna do now is drop in this marrow bone. I'm gonna drop it in with the bone only part in between the sensor and the light. So this is the part which doesn't have marrow. Now I'm gonna drop it in here and I'm gonna place it right up against the sensor to minimize any light leakage. Now, what's interesting, before I even take a reading, is you can still see the light on the other side. So you can see here we have the device about an inch away from the sensor. The cool thing is the marrow bone curves around, so it's going to block off a lot of light leakage from the side, though again, it's not perfect. But when you come around here, you can see in here, that light is glowing through the bone. So if I were to turn this off, there we go. So now you can see that without the light going. Now I'll turn that on and you can see that already we've got some of that red light penetrating through. So that shows to me straight away that the light, it does penetrate. I mean, we can visually see it. Okay, so now for the moment of truth, what I'm gonna do is take another reading on the sensor to see how much light is making it through the bone and hitting the sensor. 3.7 milliwatts. Let's take another reading. 3.8. Okay, so we've taken 3 readings there. So 3.8 seems to be the magic number here. So remember we were at 64 milliwatts without the bone in place. So 3.8 is about 6% of the total amount. So that means the bone is blocking 94% of the light, 10 mils of bone, right? Which is the thickest part of the human skull in a male. A female, their skull is a lot thinner, or not a lot thinner, their skull is thinner from about 3 to 8 mils. A male's adult skull ranges from about 4 to 10. So this is for the thickest area, okay? So we're getting about 6% light coverage. Now what's interesting when you see on the screen here, remember previously without the bone, it was an equal split, 50-50. Half the light was going to near infrared, half the light was going to red. With this new measurement, we're seeing a lot more power in the near infrared wavelength, probably about 3 or 4 times more than the red light. And that doesn't surprise me. That's what I expected. We know that near infrared light is better at penetrating through tissue, through bone. So that's why we're seeing more near infrared here. However, we are seeing the red, which again doesn't surprise me because visually we can see the red on the inside of the bone. So what does this mean? Well, it means that, yeah, if you use a device such as this or any other red light therapy device, assuming it's putting out a good amount of power, it's going to penetrate into the brain. Remember, this had a figure of 64 milliwatts over centimeter squared. Now to put that in perspective, a typical red light therapy panel from Mitre Red Light or Platinum LED or Rouge Care, at 6 inches from the panel, we're seeing anything from say 40 to 80 milliwatts over centimeter squared. So that's at 6 inches. If you actually move right up to a panel, you're seeing numbers well above 100, which means if you put your head right up against a large LED panel from a reputable company, by the way, you can head over to the Light Therapy Insider's shopping tool and you can see the power output figures from my experiments and my reviews. You can see them in there, so you can figure out how your panel may compare to this. If we do that, you're gonna get a ton of energy going into the brain. Actually, no, it's not a ton of energy. You're gonna get a percentage of energy into the brain. But what's important here is the brain doesn't necessarily need as much light energy as say muscle tissue or say a joint. I haven't gone deep into the research here, but I have seen a few articles indicating that the brain doesn't need much for activity. So that's why some people say you should only use low powered devices on the brain. But remember, you've still got to get through the skull. So you do need a bit of power for that. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and like these experiments, please hit the like button below and also subscribe. I do want to do more experiments like this and I do value the feedback. The more likes I get, it tells me more people who like it, more people are enjoying it. I should do more of them. So hit like, hit subscribe, leave any questions or comments as well. Back to the video now. Okay, that's really cool. So now what I want to do is flip the bone around or position it in another way so we can look at the penetration through the bone and through the marrow. So there's about, I don't know, 4 to 8 mils of fat in here, marrow tissue. I don't know how it compares from a makeup point of view to the brain, but I'd say it's pretty similar. It's going to be better than muscle tissue, obviously. I should also mention this is a reasonably fresh bone. It's been in the fridge for a few days, so it may have dried out. I'm not too sure how water content would impact the effects of this. Obviously though, this isn't a super scientific experiment. So again, let's see what we get as a baseline. 63, 64, 50, 50, perfect. Okay, so let's try drop this in. All right, it's in place. I'm gonna take a measurement here. Bit of a limitation doing it this way because some light's getting underneath the bone. I'll take a reading, but it may not be the most accurate reading. Let's have a look. 4.8, yeah, that's showing me that it should be less because it's also going through the fat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stand this up, but that means I'm gonna have to move this back a bit to give it some more space. Okay, so let's get a baseline reading. There we go. We're going to baseline reading here of 55 milliwatts over centimeter squared. Again, we're getting a pretty even split between red and near infrared light. Now I'm going to drop this in, smack it bang down the bottom. There is very little light leakage underneath. Now, what's interesting, before we take a measurement, come have a look at this. You can see up here, you can actually see that red glow. That is light penetrating through the bone and through the marrow. Down here, it's a little bit harder to see, but it does light up a little bit. Okay, but if you're looking closely, it looks pretty dark, and that's sitting flush underneath. So there's very, very little light leakage through here. Let's see what number we had. So before we had 55 milliwatts over centimeter squared with a pretty even split between the two. Let's take another reading. Very, very little, 0.142. Which is good. I mean, I'm quite happy with that result because it shows that this setup is rather accurate. Okay, let's break this down. So we'll take another reading. Yeah, so it's pretty consistent there, which is great. Okay, so what does this all mean? Firstly, mainly near infrared light. Okay, so near infrared light again is penetrating better through the bone and the fatty tissue. Only a little bit of red light. Okay, so that doesn't surprise me. We saw it before. We know that's how it works in terms of light penetration. The reason why you're seeing these other colors, a bit of blue, greens, and amber, is because that is the background light. That is my spotlight, overhead lights. They're further away from the room. There's nothing directly above me, but that is detecting the ambient light. And the reason why it's showing in here and it wasn't showing in the previous test, because again, the lights are on, is because these figures here are so much lower. We're only getting a 0.146. Previously, pretty much if you're above, say, 0.5, these other colors relatively are non-existent. These other colors were also here on the previous scan. It's just that they were so low, it was just flatlining. If you pulled up the Excel spreadsheet, the figures would be pretty much the same. So that's all good. So the light is still penetrating. Percentage-wise, what did we have? We had 55. Now we're down to 0.1. 5, so 0.1. So it's you're only getting 0.25% penetrating through the bone and the marrow. Now the other thing I need to note is I don't know exactly how thick the bone is down here. It looks thinner, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually more tissue inside the bone. If you've ever cooked marrow bones, for instance, down there's a lot of matrix in the bone there. Like you can scoop out the marrow, but you still have, you know, the cross section of the bone. So it's not super thick like the top end. So what I'm saying is here, it's kind of hard to measure. Now, I don't think we would see this in the skull anywhere. It's more limbs and at joints where you see this sort of makeup. I know this, we cook a lot of bone broth. I do a lot of hunting and home kill and stuff like that. So that's how we have all this stuff lying around. What I'm saying is, it's probably not a direct comparison to what we did before. A better way to do it would have been to do that measurement with the marrow in place, then scoop out the marrow and do another measurement. In fact, what I'm gonna try, no, I can't do it that way. That's a bit of a bummer. But you know what? We're gonna come up here now to that hot spot where you could see the light. Now, what I'm gonna try and do, if I turn it around like this, it actually lines up rather well with that hotspot. So you can see that hotspot in there. So this bone through here is going to be a lot more like this and less like that thicker, wider stuff. So what we'll do is we'll take a measurement here, then we'll remove the bone and take another measurement. So let's see what we get. 1.39. So yeah, there's more light getting through here than down the bottom. 1.32. Again, near infrared, red light, but here you can actually see how little those other colors look. It's just because there's more energy in this particular wavelength. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull that away. So we've got 1.32. We're going to pull that away without moving anything. 67 milliwatts, mainly red in this particular setup here, but still with bone and a couple mils of marrow, you're still getting light. So what does this tell me? It tells me that if you use this particular device here and shine it on the head, you're going to get, say, 1 milliwatt of light, even at, I don't know, 3 to 5 millimeters into the brain. If you're a female or someone younger, or you're hitting a part of the brain with a thinner skull area, that light's even going to go further into the tissue. If you're using a higher powered device, like a large panel, or a laser, or chroma iron forge, for instance, that thing's like super powerful, like 200 milliwatts. If you're using that, it's going to get even further into the brain, into the body, which is pretty neat. It's also going to be good if you're working on joint health issues. You know the light's going to get in there. Now, there's an interesting thought here where some people say you shouldn't overdose, yada yada, can cause issues. There's an opposing thought to that where it's like, look, if you want to treat deep into the tissue, right? If you want to treat deep into the joint, let's say it's like an internal knee issue, or you've fractured your femur. Oh my gosh, it'd be horrible. But let's say you've fractured your femur and you want to get the light into there. You've got to go through the skin, the fat, the muscle, and then hit the bone, right? And if you've got an issue with the marrow deep into the bone itself, I mean, yeah, you're going to need a massive amount of energy to penetrate all of those layers to get inside here, especially if you've got big legs like me in this particular example. If it was, say, your wrist, hey, I mean, I've done these experiments before where you simply put your hand over the light source, turn all the lights off, and you actually see that, hey, there's still some light coming through. Only a small amount, but you can see it. Especially I did that with the Iron Forge device. It penetrates right through the hand. So the good news is, yeah, red light therapy works. It does penetrate. It is going to get into the brain. It is going to get into the joints as well. Now, of course, we've got this really neat skull here, so we need to do something with this. So what I'm thinking we'll do, we'll position this in a way where we can have the light on one side and the sensor on the other, and we'll see what happens. Well, first up, I just want to show you this. I've got the light sitting here. Now, I know this isn't perfect. We're going to come in with my camera phone here. You can actually see, like, up here is where the teeth sockets and the jaw. You can see that light up here in the oral cavity. I don't know what that's called technically, but you can see it's all lit up. I know there's a lot of light leakage around here, but you can see that that light is penetrating through that bone, okay? Now this bone is quite thin. It's only a millimeter or two. I mean, it's reasonably brittle. It's also being cleaned and processed, so it's not like the tibia bone I had over there. But still, it does show that that light is getting through there. If we were to shine it into the eyeball, for instance, on this one side, you can see how the whole skull, or different areas of the skull, do light up. And this is what we've seen before. James Carroll showed me an image where someone had put a lollipop, a Thor laser lollipop, inside their mouth, turned it on, and you can see the light up around the eye cavities, right down here, back of the jaw. It is penetrating, and that's red light, right? So the near-infrared light is going further. Now, of course, it's going to be quite tricky for me to do this experiment, but let's test it. What we'll do here is we'll take a reading, 21 in this particular reading, 21 milliwatts over centimeter squared. I'm going to come in here, and we're going to take another reading with this bone in place, skull in place. What do we got? 0.6. So it's getting all the way through here as well. Again, mainly the near-infrared light. It's not much, but this is coming through the top. I mean, obviously it's a goat's skull, not a human skull. It's coming through the top, through the sinus cavity, through the top of the mouth, and then out the other side. You're still getting light in there, which is rather neat. I guess that's a wrap. Now, what are the takeaways here? Well, I've kind of touched on the things already. The first thing that I think of though is there are devices on the market that don't put out the equivalent power that I'm seeing here. I mean, this has been running for what, 20 minutes and it's already quite warm. There's a lot of energy coming from this. It's actually, I really like this particular unit. Mitre Red do a good one as well, the Mitre Mobile Flex. Nice handheld, battery powered, good battery life, all that good stuff. But a lot of these headsets that you can get, whether it's hear loss or the cognitive ones, they're only putting out half a dozen milliwatts, 6, 7, maybe 10 milliwatts. My concern with those is the light may not penetrate. Well, it wouldn't penetrate. If you're only getting 6% penetration, it's minuscule amount that's in the brain. You're probably getting more penetration on a hot sunny day without a cap on, for instance. So I often wonder, like, would those work? Do they work? Now, the thing is, I've had my doubts with some of those products, but I hear so many people saying they're using them and getting really good results. And these people don't have any reason to make things up. I know people that have very serious health issues, brain issues, some who are literally at the end of their life. Their condition's so bad that they're just effectively waiting to die. And I know they've used some of these conditions and have had a burst of life, so to speak, from a cognitive performance point of view. So something's going on here. It's hard to explain that on placebo effect, but when you look at the numbers, you think, why? Like, that light is so weak. Is it actually making effect? But it seems to be making effect. Anyway, this video is going way too long. I would love you guys to tell me what I should do next. What other experiments should I do here? Maybe I should do things differently. Maybe I've missed something and all this data is invalid. I know it's not perfect, but still, it does add some insight. I like doing these, so yeah, if you do have other ideas, please let me know. Now, in the meantime, if you haven't seen my penetration video using clothing, I'll put a link to that up there. This is where I do a similar sort of test, but I use different types of clothing. The outcome of that video was quite interesting. I can tell you now, there's a variable that's more important than the thickness of the clothes. And to go find out what that variable is, click up here.